Let's get sweaty.
Hey guys, welcome to another Shenmue Dojo video. Today's video is going to be a follow-up video to the video I did probably about a couple of weeks ago now, talking about the world of Shenmue 1. I'm going to be doing the exact same idea, but with Shenmue 2, because it's very much a different sort of game world, I guess, coming on from the back of Shenmue 1, which is considerably more homely. Shenmue 2 has a very much of a different feel, a lot more varied, but it's still a fantastic world to explore, get lost in. So let's have a little discussion around the setting, the people, the music, all those sorts of things that make Shenmue 2 what it is. So let's dive into the setting itself. Now, as everybody who's played Shenmue 2 will know, if you haven't played Shenmue 2 for the first time, there's going to be some spoilers here, so you may want to tune out, but that's completely up to you. We've got essentially three areas. You've got Hong Kong Wanchai, which is it's basically where you step off the boat, you get off at Aberdeen, you work through into Wanchai and the sort of that whole area there. You have Kowloon, which is based on the Kowloon walled city. I'll talk about that in a bit. And then finally you get into Languishan Guilin. Again, a very, very different feel to things. Now, the first bit I'm going to talk about is Wanchai, Hong Kong. The first impression you get from that place is it's just how bloody big it is. It is massive. When you compare it to even the map size of the original Shenmue game, before we get into the actual feel of it, it is way, way bigger. Way, 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 way bigger, much bigger. So straight away, you step off that boat, and with the cutscene, you can see sort of the sweeping shots over Aberdeen, Pigeon Park. Then you end up in sort of the Green Market Quarter. You see all the people hustling, bustling around as well, all the traffic, etc. Straight away, it's a different scene. Straight away, it's a different feel. It's busy. It's foreign. You don't know what to expect when you get off that boat for the first time. And then as you go through the world and start exploring, it's very, very varied. When you look at, you've got the docks area at Aberdeen, you've got then Wanchai and the quarters there, which all have their own unique characteristics to it. But pieced together, it is massive. And you can easily get lost. So walking from essentially the boat to the come over guest house, you can easily take a wrong turn, end up in South Carmaine Quarter, and end up doing a big, big loop round all the quarters before you even find it. It's massive. That's why they've got maps, I guess, to make it easier to get around. Not only that, though, the setting has a lot of people around. There's lots of NPCs running around. There's lots of noise. When you walk into Wanchai itself, you go over the King's Road, you can see all the traffic under the bridge. You go into the Golden Quarter, there's traffic everywhere. And it's just full of hustle, bustle, busy people, but people who are wary of Rio is probably the word I'd say. But everything feels foreign, everything feels new, everything is much larger, and it feels vastly different to Dobuita. Now, what Shenmue 2 has done very successfully, and I think it's agreed with a lot of people that I've interviewed on the show and people we talked to, is that it successfully conveys this feeling of being essentially lost in a new place for the first time. There's not many video games that can do that and do that as well as Shenmue 2 did. And that's before we get onto the people, which I will talk about shortly. Next section, Kowloon. As I said, very much based on the old walled city. It does take liberties, I'm not going to lie to you, but you can absolutely see the inspiration from the old walled city into Shenmue 2. Shenmue 2 has, from what I can gather, more space. If you look at some of the photos of the old Kowloon, it's very tight, it's very dank, it's very dark, mergy. It's just nasty, I think is probably the word. But a lot of people lived there and called it home for a long, long time. It was essentially lawless, for want of a better expression. All sorts of dodgy businesses set up there. The threat level there is then conveyed, in my opinion, into Shenmue 2 with all the gambling dens. You've got the fighting arenas. It looks dirty, it looks run down, it looks broken. You go through the buildings, you can see the stairwell type buildings that are crumbling everywhere. It just, while it does have more space, it just feels like the stakes have been raised. There's more imminent danger. There's something likely to happen there, and you don't know what's around the next corner. So it conveys that sort of feel of that dark, nasty, horrible, and I don't mean to sound harsh here, feeling of what the walled city may have been like for somebody who's never been there before, is completely naive and really, really doesn't know what they are getting themselves in for. And that then obviously culminates in the Yellowhead building stuff, which we all know about and is fantastic. Moving away from sort of the hustle bustle of Hong Kong, the danger of Kowloon is then Guilin Langushan. Now, it's very much, I'd say, the smallest section in the game, but when you think of Kowloon, I wouldn't be surprised the size actual difference isn't massive between the two of them. I'm not actually sure whether Guilin might be considered bigger or not. I don't know. But it's the smallest section of the game in comparison to the world. It very much feels like the polar opposite of Hong Kong Kowloon. It's very peaceful. You've got luscious green fields everywhere as you walk towards Bailu Village. You then go through the lengthy forest, which is obviously procedurally generated. Yu Suzuki talks about that a lot. And then you also end up in the mountains as well, which feel dangerous. But the world itself is a lot calmer. You can feel that walking through it. The whole thing feels more serene. It's very much a focus on, you've got this whole world in front of you and around you, but the focus is very much on the conversation with Shenhua rather than everything else going around it. That world is there to support what is a very calming and serene moment within the game series so far. Perfectly executed, very, very ballsy doing something like that, considering the sort of the massive crescendo in Kowloon, but it works. And I've said this many times, it took me probably into my 20s to really understand that sort of feel around Guilin and just how clever that section was in comparison to the other two. Not that the other two weren't clever, they were very well executed, but Guilin was perfectly executed for what it wanted to do. Then you come on to the people. Hong Kong Kowloon, the people are very, very different to Dobuita. I mean, Dobuita, everybody knows Rio. They're all comfortable with him. They all know him by his first name. It's very much a homely community feel from the people that Rio interacts with. Not in Hong Kong. The moment you step off that boat, you are getting harassed for tours, photos, money, you name it. And then later on, obviously, you have that guy who takes the photo of you, just you step off the boat, he then harasses you for money, tries to threaten you. Obviously, Joy gets rid of him, but again. Then you also have the Poison Brothers. When you've lost your bag, which is another point in itself, they, within seconds, are asking Rio for money and trying to start a fight with him. Early on, you get your bag nicked. Rio is naive. He goes to help Wong. He doesn't know who he is, but he's thinking, what, child's in trouble, I'm going to help him. But it's all a ruse. He loses his bag, loses all his money. That feeling of danger or unknown around the people, unease around the people is very much conveyed in those first 25, 30 minutes of the game. And that sets the tone for the world that they live in and is linked in. And it fits really, really nicely together. On top of that, you've got the fear around Ren. I know the Mad Angels had a bit of a taboo around them, but it feels like with Ren and the Heavens, and certainly the Yellowheads and Dol Neo, there is very much a legitimate threat that they carry. Obviously, the Mad Angels in Shenmue 1, it's insinuated they've killed people. We see in Shenmue 2 that Chunyun, in that street fight, literally throws a guy to his death. Now, that's the tonal shift in terms of the people and the difference that you have between Shenmue 1 and 2. Shenmue 1 is intimated, and that's fine, and it fits the tone of the game. Shenmue 2, the stakes are raised. The people are wary, they're more dangerous, they're more likely to look to harm Rio. And something like that just blatant killing of somebody just shows that off in terms of the people far, far more effectively than I think a lot of games do. Just that one little element just shows the, oh shit, like, we are in serious business here. This could well be something else. And that's on top of the threats that Rio gets in Hong Kong. It's on top of the cutscenes that you get through Hong Kong as well, where you interact with the Yellowheads earlier on. They beat him up if you fail some QTEs. It's very much a feeling of you're on edge with the people. Some will help. Obviously, we know Joy does. We know Wong comes around eventually. We know Ren does eventually. But Rio has no support network here. He's naive. He's walking into a place that he doesn't know for the first time. And he's very trusting of people, oddly. So he is very much liable to get exploited, to get in trouble, and people take advantage of him. That support network isn't there. He doesn't have that fallback. And again, it adds to that feeling, that conviction of a foreign place, feeling lost, feeling overwhelmed, that the game does so well. Guilin's very different in terms of the people, because there's not that many that you interact with. When you get off the boat, there's a few in the port of Langushan. Very sort of generic comments here where they talk about how to get to Bailu Village. The focus is Shenhua, and that makes absolute sense. But in that 2.5 hour game segment, you get to know so much about her if you take the time to do it, that again it lends itself to that whole different feel between Kowloon, Hong Kong, and Guilin, and what they were going for in terms of the calmness, the serenity of it, and taking the time to get to know what is going to be a really important character in the games going forward. And you have certain cutscenes like where she's singing in the trees, for example. She knows about the wildlife, she knows about the village, she's very informative to Rio, but she's also very interested in him. That's the sort of thing that builds those relationships and just adds to that feel of serenity around Guilin, Shenhua, and the story going forward, obviously into the cave and that massive, massive ending which we all know about. Then, so coming on to sort of the magic weather system a little bit before I do the music, it's not as prominent here, I will say, in Shenmue 2. I think that's probably a deliberate thing. It does rain on and off. It doesn't really, for me, change the tone as much, but it is there, and it's a nice little look. You get more of a feel from the skies changing, actually. And I think I probably prefer the nighttime feel around Hong Kong than maybe I do Dobuita. I don't know why, it's just a personal thing. It feels more alive, the hustle and bustle, all the lights around it, the night sky is part of the weather system. That all feels really, really cool, and for me, feels slightly different to Dobuita, but I don't know, I prefer the feel of it. That's just me. But that's the weather system in short. Music, now, again, like Shenmue 1, the music in Shenmue 2 is absolutely fantastic. It has an insane soundtrack that just fits the story beats perfectly. From coming in on the boat, the soundtrack there is fantastic. The free music changes from day to night, but doesn't really, if my memory serves me correctly, change with the story and the tone of the story like Shenmue 1 does. I don't know why. I don't know whether that's a deliberate decision or not. The music is great. I love the contrast between the day and night in Shenmue 2. I think the tracks complement each other really, really well. I don't quite know where the decision was around changing that a little bit. Maybe it just didn't feel right to keep going with the tonal shifts in Shenmue 2. I don't know. But the music, again, is fantastic. And I would say the cutscene music feels even more epic than Shenmue 1 does, quite frankly. Guilin's music is much calmer. The soundtrack to that whole thing's much calmer. Even if you come right down to the QTE section where you're jumping over the rocks, the trees, etc., the button presses, the sound effects there, it sounds a lot calmer, and it again adds to that tranquil world that I've talked about in Guilin as you move towards Bailu village. Now, my final sort of thoughts on this, very obvious, I think, from people who've watched this video to the end. Shenmue 2 is very different to Shenmue 1 in the world that it builds. Shenmue 2 is building a world that is much bigger, much larger, has lots more people in it, and is conveying a very different set of emotions that Shenmue 1's world did. Shenmue 1's world was homely, everybody knew Rio, it was familiar, and it felt like home. Shenmue 2 does not feel like that in the slightest, and that is the biggest compliment I can give it. Even now, playing the game, 20 years on, I still get that feeling of this is a very much different place, a different contrast that I still feel lost in, even to this day, than Shenmue 1. And that's a huge, huge compliment to the way they build the world. You get off that boat, you're like, right, shit, I'm out of my depth here. I'm a fish out of water. And that in itself, in the first 2-3 minutes of the game, is exactly why Shenmue 2's world is perfectly built for the game, the situation, and the story that it was trying to convey at the time. And again, I would argue with anybody, there aren't many games that convey such a contrast from the previous game as well as Shenmue 2 did. It was fantastically done, still is fantastically done, and holds up today, in my personal opinion. But guys, the world of Shenmue 2, what do you think about it? Does it, for you, convey the feelings it does for me in terms of feeling lost, feeling overwhelmed, being worried about the people that you're interacting with and everything else around it? Do you have a preference between the two as well? I've always said Shenmue 2 is my favourite of the 3 games for many, many reasons. The world is part of it, I must say. But what's your favourite? And drop some comments below, guys, and I'll pick some up as we go through. The last thing for me to do is give shout out to the members. Like I say in almost every video, £2 a month. You can sign up for the membership. You get all video content outside the podcast ahead of time. All the money goes towards the website costs for James and I, and also like competition prizes, etc. as well. guys, that if anybody wants to sign up, fantastic. If you don't, it doesn't matter. None of the content is locked behind a paywall, so it's completely voluntary. But guys, thank you for those of you who have done it. It's very much appreciated. There's 29 of you now. I'm going to have to make a credit scene or something at this rate. But we'll go through the list for everybody before we round off. So BCDC Dude, Sam, Dominic Johnson, Sam Say, Renners, Richard Cartledge, that's me, Carl, Terry, Stuart Peacock, Mark Pulverizer, Little Crypty Monster, Titch, Richard King, Sean Potter, Guppy Coy, Bruce Wayne 937, Survival Spears, Peter Hoffland, Sean Don, Wandering Through Shenmue, Phantom Riverstone, Bruce Wayne 911, Mike Franz, Manny Figueroa, Master Mo, Nick Hughes, Sean Hastings, Clunky Mage and William Lovering. Thank you for being members and contributing to the running costs of Shenmue Dojo and keeping things running. It's much appreciated. Everybody who's dropping into these videos, guys, thank you, very much for enjoying the Dojo's content. It means a lot to James and I as we keep putting this out, as hopefully we move towards the Shenmue 4. We don't know what's going to happen with that at the moment, but don't forget on the 4th of every month, hashtag Let's Get Shenmue 4, hashtag Shenmue Anime 2. We don't go quiet. We're in the hard yards now. Keep pushing and we will get a Shenmue 4. But guys, thank you for dropping in on content. Don't forget to give us a like, share, subscribe on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all the usual places. And I'll be back with a video in the not too distant future. But for now, guys, take care and have a good one.